Welcome back, dear viewers. Thank you so much for joining us on our second episode on saving indigenous languages. You know, there is this, I would like to delve into another topic. There's this common notion or popular worldview that, tribal languages, since it is spoken languages, it doesn't have any grammatical structure. It doesn't have any grammar. कुछ grammar तो होता ही नहीं हम लोग को. For example, in अरुणाचली हिंदी, we just put gender का notion है ही नहीं. लड़की है, खारा है, खाता है, We don't have any grammatical structure. That is one of the notion we have out there. As a linguist, how would you look into it? Wanglitsa, I would like to, you've been a little quiet, so I would like to ask that question to you. And of course, both of you can also add on into it.
Okay, first of all, I think that all languages, irrespective of whether it's dominant or the smaller or whatever, actually started with orally only.
Okay.
That's every language, whether today we talk about English, Hindi or any other, which are very much well-developed language, they started with oral. So in that concept, not having that proper grammar or because the language is not written, I think that is too much to say. Okay. There's layman belief, there's notions of not having a grammar. For example, simple, grammar is what actually? Grammar is nothing but it's a rule actually, rule of a grammar based on which the language functions. Just now I'm speaking English, so if I don't speak as per the grammar of the English, then you will not be able to understand. Similarly, if I speak in Nishi or Adi, which do not have proper set of rules, then nobody will understand. But if I use that in correct way, then this listeners, that person will understand what I'm saying. So therefore, all languages has a grammar. First of all, that concept notion should go away. I think that especially the oral language do not have a grammar. As a linguist, all languages are important. All languages are superior. Okay, in terms of whether we talk about sound system, words, or constant, everything. They are rich in itself. Yes, of course, there are some languages which are not standarded as such, which you can use in formal setting. That's of course there is some oral languages or the minor languages that they are not so developed in terms of having written literature, textbooks, and then standard form of use of language. Because these days writing system is slowly coming up in our parts of our Arunachal Pradesh, like people are developing scripts, right? So that script helped actually to formalize your language, to bring into the written form, and through which you can write down and also you can speak. So that is still in the process. But as such, that I don't think that oral language do not have that's what called grammar is too much to say.
Okay. So what about you, sir? What is your view on it?
This is something that makes me quite angry, although I'm smiling now. Because for too many years, people have said tribal languages are primitive and they don't have proper grammar and all that. But this is not true at all. In fact, oral languages tend to be more complex than written languages because once you write a grammar of a language, it is it is almost fossilized there, and there is this prescriptive attitude that is coming in and saying, okay, this is a proper grammar, this is not a proper grammar, etc. But oral languages are free of written structure, therefore they are much more diverse. Even the same language from village to village, there is so much of diversity. We all
more flexibility also.
Flexibility and more complexity. Now I can tell you from Oso, I can give you examples from grammar or pronunciation. Oso language has one of the toughest pronunciations in Northeast, maybe one of the world's toughest languages to pronounce.
Would you like to give one example? It's really interesting.
Yes, it was quite a challenge to learn that. I have written a tongue twister here.
Okay.
You can see how it sounds. It sounds like pr, br, tr, all those things. So, stunye, tsanye, tsunye, drups, tslabo.
Okay, what does that mean?
So that's a tongue twister, just a made up sentence.
Okay.
But after drinking wine, eating fish and laughing, let us go and search for a pumpkin.
Okay.
Yeah?
Almost sounds like a song. It's so beautiful.
So another very difficult sentence to pronounce is
Okay.
No? So this is so complex, so beautiful that it is not true that our the indigenous languages are primitive or simple or
We don't have
no,
grammar structure
no.
like that. It's
I have studied phonology, phonetics and phonology of Osaka is more systematic than English.
okay.
Yeah, more systematic than English and more systematic than my own language. So it is a joy to see this kind of complexity and then mind-boggling complexity, I could say.
Okay.
So that's my answer.
What about you, ma'am? Would you like to add?
Well, because we are
Just a
talking,
little
yeah,
concise and brief.
like you took example of Arunachali Hindi.
Okay.
It's very dear to us because it's our link language and bonding language. There is a grammar in Arunachali Hindi also,
Okay. That's
because
really
we have what we would say in linguistics, we have put our own grammar to Hindi, borrowed language. So when you say gender nahi hai, this is a misleading kind of statement, because in our Tibeto-Burman languages, in some of the languages, words में वो noun का वो component incorporate नहीं होता है, मतलब
एक example.
जैसे कि like suppose we don't say this ikar and akar जो होता है ना gender का, जैसे Ram tugu dodo, okay, Ram is eating the mango, suppose, okay, so we don't know, if we just say tugu dodo, we don't know whether it's a female eating the mango fruit or a male eating the mango, सिर्फ verb से पता नहीं चलता है. वही ग्रामर रूल जो है वो हम लोग हिंदी में अप्लाई करके वहाँ से जेंडर को हटा दिया वर्ब में, इसलिए सर जाता है, मैम जाता है, सर आम खाता है, मैडम आम खाता है. What we are doing, we are putting our grammar rules on the borrowed language.
Okay.
So for me, when I study only Arunachali Hindi structure, I can actually get clue to grammar of my native language also. And I mean, it's a very old school definition now when they say tribal languages do not have grammar. It's a very old school definition.
Yeah, of course.
Linguistics is flourishing because of indigenous languages.
That's really interesting. So basically it is really interesting to know that no languages of Arunachal Pradesh is included in 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution. So we would like to know what is 8th schedule and what are the benefits that a language gets when it is included under 8th schedule, and what are the ways that or process जिसमें we can include our languages into the 8th schedule. Manglitsa, would you like to highlight few points on that?
Okay, 8th schedule languages actually it's a protection or recognition given by the Indian constitutions to some of the languages. Right now under this 8th schedule language we have 22 languages. I think in 1950 when this constitution was formed, then at the time 14 languages were added. Then later on various amendments, other 8 languages were further added. In I think that 1967 the Sindhi was added, and then 1992 another 3 languages, Konkani, Manipuri, and then the Nepali was added, and the later part in 2003 another 4 languages were added, like Dogri and Bodo, for example. This is one of the tribal languages, and Maithili, Santali and all. So in like that, so there are 22 languages. These are the actually special status given by the constitutions of India. So through that, those languages which are under scheduled languages, they get protection, legal protection. For example, they have status, they have a lot of safeguard. All right, they have government has given like a lot of opportunities in terms of like development funding, in terms of, so they get a lot of opportunities. So it is good, like our languages or some of our natural language should be part of that scheduled language, should come under scheduled language. But of course there are many other criteria which has government has, or actually there's no explicit I think criteria that the government or any policymakers have put that where the reason for that. But then there are a few criteria, for example population in terms of like, and also history about, like if you have a classical language then you are I mean, like which has a very long history of literature, history, texts, then definitely they. But then, in our case, we don't see any languages which has a long history of written records. So in that way, it may take time, but then we can. I mean, like if people, community demand, there's a political willpower, then I think in the long process, people can have. So in that, I think like Lizaman can also add to that.
Yeah.
Well, in the literature, when we look at the proceedings of Constituent Assembly, the language component was very important part of debate. There is huge literature on that. And one thing that came across from all the debates where it was not very conclusive, but one thing was that there were many, many languages, you know, in India. And for the ease of communication, the priorities were given only to languages which had script and which had printed literature. And then later on the cutoff of like 10,000 speakers who speak the language. These criteria were given to make a language scheduled. Scheduled was what? Basically it was a special schedule of languages, the 8th schedule, where these 14 languages first were included with script and printed literature. But it was, as linguists would say, the most unfair kind of listing that had happened, because there were many, many tribal languages, Adivasi languages like Munda, Bhili, which had more than 10,000 speakers, living speakers. There were representatives from the Adivasi community also in the constitution that time, but because of nobody really can say why this scheduling happened, and only printed literature and script, those languages which they were given prominence. States were also created according to these languages, and through the years now the list has included 22 now, and only 2 tribal languages were successful in becoming official languages, and that were Bodo and Santhali. And it's also because they had their script. Bodo uses Devanagari script with very rich literature, printed literature, and Santhali also came up with their own script, Olchiki. Okay, and this was what it happened. They created all these scripts, printed literature, and this is how they could, so script, having a script is also important criteria. Printed literature is also important criteria, but I mean it's also it is a long process. We have just begun, but I'm sure we will get there someday. And once the language is recognized in scheduled languages, as Wanglit sir has pointed out, lot of funds are given for development of the language, trainings, workshops, language teachers are appointed. So there are many benefits of being in the list also, official language list.
I think it takes a time. For example, right now Tulu, for example, there are Tulu and then Rajasthani, and also we have there are 2 other languages, Garhwali, for example. They are still in the process because they have demanded to be included in 8th schedule languages. So like that, in our case also we can still keep on doing. But before that, as I said, like we have to develop our own literature, whatever it meant, language and everything. Then I think government will later part.
So basically we have discussed the degree of endangerment and factors leading to the language declination. Now let's discuss on the silver linings, right? So we are on a new age, and we are, I mean, the modern technology have, developed so, I mean, it's out of our head right now. So, Dr. Vijay, we want to know, how can the new age technology and software assist in promoting and archiving endangered languages?
Well, now, many technical support, many types of technical support is available to indigenous languages now, the kind of support that we didn't have earlier. Earlier, let's say about 30-40 years ago, even printing a small book would have been a mammoth task, but now that is easy. Now we have moved on to systematic language documentation, and when we do the language documentation, we do audio, video, recording, and then we have worldwide language archives. And in India as well, We have in the universities at RG also we have language archives and these language archives very systematically record, classify and then preserve digital language data. Now we are just leaping into another age altogether, the age of artificial intelligence, and that has opened up enormous possibilities for our endangered languages. The AI is not well developed as yet in order to in any way support endangered languages in a meaningful way, in the sense that the kind of support that we have for English, Google Translate is there.
Yeah.
And now Khasi, for example, recently entered into Google Translate arena, but the Khasi speakers,
I guess,
yeah,
recently developed. Wancho script, yeah, I
Yeah,
guess.
some
no,
animations.
I'm talking about Google Translate,
Okay.
for example.
That's
But Khasi speakers say that is still very primitive now. The translation is quite bad and all. But that's just a beginning. Now the problem with AI right now is it needs enormous amount of language data in order to produce a good translation.
Okay.
And that kind of documentation, transcription we do not have. But the solution is not to produce that kind of enormous data, because that is very resource intensive. Now AI will get better in learning how to support local languages, indigenous languages, with the minimal data.
Okay.
And that time is coming very soon. So it's a very exciting period for all of us who are working with the endangered languages. But at the same time, not to forget that languages do not survive just because of technical support.
Yeah, there
Languages,
are other factors.
the prerequisite is that we speak, we use the language in communities, especially in the families. And if that is there, then all these things can help the language become stronger and stronger.
And also, I also wanted to ask, like, if an individual who wants to preserve their own languages, what are the basic skill sets one needs to have, or the knowledge that individual need to require to record their languages, or let's say, document it?
Okay. Yeah, I would say there is no big technical skill or anything that is required. The most important skill is the knowledge of your language. But even without that, you can help preserve your languages. How is that? You can you have a lot of modern technology that is available now. Young people are producing vlogs in their languages, social media content, and use your languages to text, for example, and produce. If you are into producing literature, write poetry, write children's rhymes, and write short stories. These are the kind of things that we need to develop in our local languages.
Okay.
And most of all, again, in your, especially for the youth, in your gatherings, when you are together with your peer group members, use your language. So these are not great skills that are required. It is only simple decisions in your village you have to make.
So, Wanglitsa, would you like to add on, because you have worked with Kasik community as well, referring to that example, could you?
I think I just add to what the Father Vijay was talking about. I think language we have to understand, like, it's not only about like sound, words or sentences. It's beyond that. I mean, like, languages is very encompasses many things. Folklore, folk song, folk tales, all those things are part of proverbs, for example. They're parts of language. So therefore, it's not merely like individual can start. Of course, you don't need to be a linguist to work on any language. I mean, at a simple, because I think earlier those languages which are so far been worked on, they have started with simple, people like ordinary people. They just started working on that. So as what he was saying, like, we don't need like expert as such to begin. Anybody can start. Anybody can start writing, documenting some folk songs, folk tales, small thing, and that's how we contribute. And then in the long run, it will survive. I do really agree. I mean, like, this is a technological world actually, where you can't just only remain oral, or even not only also like written type. It should go beyond, like when digitalization is very important part of that, which is a very like required at this moment, like for if your language has to grow, prosper. So in terms of technology is very much part of that.
Lisa ma'am, what do you think would be the efforts from the state government that are need to be done in order to preserve the, or let's say maintain the continuity of indigenous languages?
First of all, there has been an initiative by the government on linguistic survey of Arunachal.
Okay.
I think by the Directorate of Research. So it started, I think, 5 years back. There need to be a comprehensive linguistic survey, first of all, and we have to really make a list of all like specific language groups that are living today, very much active, because every linguistic group have specific kind of problems. What is applicable in Nishi and Papumpare might not be really applicable in smaller groups, in inaccessible areas. Like different kinds of problems have to be first come out. What kind of specific problems are there? After that, there should be a comprehensive language policy for the state, which we don't have actually. Language policy also we don't have. And then right now, February 2024, this third language for our languages have been declared by the government of Arunachal Pradesh. I mean, these all are happening, but like I said, let research be done, give us funds to work on every possible language groups that are there, let it come out, let the research be read by the policy makers. For that we need funding also. So far all of us are managing on our own. We have taken funds from UGC, and Vijay sir is doing on his own with some funding, So, but government also needs to really, push the funds towards research on our languages as well. Second is, even though our languages are being taught in schools, I would like to say that the these economic benefits of teaching the language, that should be very visible, like mother languages as livelihood option, teaching of really mother language. This is very important. It is not the problem only of languages of tribals here, across the world. All the indigenous groups are having same problem, that there is no livelihood attached to or economic value attached to mother tongue languages spoken by the indigenous people. This is very important. Now that teachers are being trained to teach the textbooks, but the honorarium that is given to them is just 1,000 only. I mean, at committee level also we said that just increase it to 10,000. There will be some dignity of teaching this one, but as we hear, there is sometimes delay in payment of even 1,000 also. So this is very discouraging. So government should actually take notice of these developments also, these issues that are happening with teaching of the mother tongue. And last point I would like to also say is that we are doing on our own level the documentation, writing grammars, but it is only at the university level or with some research institutes. This has to come directly to language pedagogy in school. It has to be linked with textbooks. All this knowledge that we are recording, it should be components of textbooks also. So I mean, lot of work needs to be done actually. We have lot of work. So yeah.
Okay. So I think that I put forward the last question on three of you. It's really basic, but it's really important as well. Why do language matters, right? And what will happen if a language gets extinct? Father, would you like to highlight on that? Just little briefly.
Yes, see, languages are directly connected to our identity. Languages make us who we are. It is the language, and through that lens we see the world. Okay, and especially for indigenous languages, their languages are the only links to their past. Most of the indigenous languages do not have written literature as of now. They are just developing, but all the oral history, the past, everything is in oral form, And when you lose the language, you lose all that.
Okay.
And the consequences of losing the language for indigenous people can be devastating. And there have been various studies about this. In certain indigenous communities, they've compared those who lost the language with those who didn't. And in the group which lost the language, there have been instances of increased alcoholism, drug abuse, suicide rates. Why is that? Because it is that rootlessness that comes in. So you can see in Arunachal many people regretting, हम मेरा भाषा को नहीं जानता है, no? कितना कोशिश करना भी अभी सीखने नहीं पाता है, no? Once you lose it, you lost it. So that pain will remain with you always, and that pain is not going to reduce in the next generation. If you lose the language, your children are going to search for those roots all the more, and that pain is going to increase. This is termed as historical trauma of losing the language.
Okay.
So this trauma accumulates for generations. So this is one. I mean, there are so many things
That's
that can
really
be said.
interesting.
But,
That's really interesting. What about you, Lisa, ma'am? Just little
Yeah,
1-2
so,
points on that.
Like furthering Vijay sir's inputs, as a tribal child who never had exposure to mother tongue in the school curriculum, even at college level, it's only when we did at master's level in university something called linguistics. As a tribal child, we came to know that our mother tongue is also an important subject. At the advanced study level, it gave us big kind of dignity to us also. Like, so there is when one knows one's language, it is access to so many other knowledge systems within your community. You come to know about so many things: architecture, folk belief, why we do certain rituals, the community songs with full of wisdom, and that rootedness sir is talking about, being connected to something which is different from the other. I have also something to give to the world, the knowledge and wisdom, and also the fact that you are a continuous part of something, your ancestors, or this belonging to rootedness is very important. And yeah, of course, like when we know about certain scientific knowledge, how we can conserve nature, it's rooted in indigenous knowledge system. So as a seeker of knowledge also, for me, being rooted to my language and culture gives me the confidence of an individual. So yeah.
I think for me, we must understand first of all that the importance of language. When we understand what is the importance of language, then we know like the importance of losing that language. So first of all, what I understand language is an identity marker. So if a language is lost, then definitely your identity is lost. That's the first thing. And secondly, also it is a source of many things, because through language you are able to express yourself, your culture, your worldview, everything. So if you're not able to express language, if you're not able to speak your language, then you won't be able to express all those things, different knowledge what I'm talking about, right? So loss of language is of course loss of everything, we can say.
It's not just the loss of culture.
Yeah, it's not only loss of culture, because everything, that's the relationship, for example, the connectedness, belongingness, all these are lost. You don't understand each other the moment you, because if you don't know what to, address to your parents, for example, your sister, your siblings, your relations, then you will not know the relationship between that. Today, if I address somebody as a amo, ane, then I know like he's my mother or he's my auntie or uncle, whatever, right? So this is very important. But all this medicinal, for example, knowledge is also lost. Flora, fauna, everything about, everything in this set.
So therefore, ecology.
Exactly. So at the end, what I would like to quote with this, would like to end with this one quote. Like, I just made it up. Okay, that is, if a man dies, he dies alone. But if a language dies, all die alone.
That is.
So that is what I would like to say.
That is extremely poignant. Made me really sad, and we thank you so much, three of you, for joining us today. I hope our viewers were equally enlightened. Thank you so much, viewers, for joining with us. Goodbye and take care.